career spans over 30 years in public administration and is currently the Senior Director, Planning and Development at the University of Technology, Jamaica. Working experience over that period has centered on strategic planning, research analysis, and project development and management, 18 of which have been at the senior management level. Particular involvement has been in the development and implementation of strategic plans, as well as annual performance evaluation and reward systems. All right, I was getting a little bit of feedback there. All right, so I'll continue. Management involvement and, excuse me, let me ensure that we are still tuned in. Right. Management involvement in internationally funded infrastructure and institutional strengthening projects, as well as oversight responsibility for institutional procurement activities. In addition, consultancy and facilitation services have been provided to countries such as Guyana, Suriname, St. Kitts and Nevis, and to organizations, ministries, departments, and agencies in Jamaica, including the Factories Corporation of Jamaica, FCJ, Ministry of Finance and Planning, Tax Administration, and the Ministry of Education. So please share those clap hand emojis as we welcome our first presenter, Denise Stevenson Hamill. Welcome, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation to this very impactful webinar, I am sure. Okay. And good morning to everyone. Okay, are you seeing my screen?
Yes, I am seeing your screen clearly. I hope everyone is as well. All right, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you again. And good morning to everyone. I'll be sharing a little bit of our experience at J-TEC Jamaica. And the topic is tracking and improving graduate employability at J-TEC. And in starting, I'll be looking a little bit at the context or present situation in the education sector. I'll be sharing a bit on the university, the scanning tools that we use here, and highlights from a market research study that was completed in late 2023. I'll also be sharing a bit on our employability performance measures, the future of work, and the strategies suggested for higher education institutions. Okay. We are very much aware that governments, including our own, have become increasingly concerned about the role and relevance of higher education systems, institutions, and policies. And our main barrier continues to be the cost of tertiary, a barrier to access. And there has been increasing focus on the number of shorter courses of study on offer. Financial pressures also and a need for accountability have led us to key requirements in higher education. There is a stronger emphasis on quality, efficiency, outcomes, and providing value for money. Focus on graduation rates versus enrollment rates, and a greater demand for measurement and reporting, not only from our parent ministry, but also critical agencies like the Commission, PIOJ, and Statin, for example. There are many stakeholders in the education sector. I've just shared these stakeholder groupings here on screen, and they are very much interested in getting information for varying purposes. For governments, they're looking for accountability, also for policy and planning direction, and also interested in manpower planning and funding and allocation of resources, for example. Institutions like ours at J-TEC, we are concerned about our internal management and very focused on data-driven decision-making. These are some of the purposes for which information is required. The public generally needs accountability, and our students, they're interested in quality and for program choices. all right, and from industry, partnership arrangements for research funding, etc. I'll just quickly share about our institution. You're all aware of J-TEC. And in response to these various demands from institutions, we have institutions like J-TEC being established. And you're seeing in the column to the far left our transition, our history from an institute through to a college and ultimately an accredited university. And our numbers, student numbers, staff numbers, or alumni population. And currently we have 9 major academic units and 6 campuses across the island. Our graduate output average annually is over 1,800, and we have 1,000 plus of these in the STEM areas. For environmental scanning, we utilize various tools, employer surveys, graduate surveys. We look at business intelligence, research studies, and general observations. And the study we contracted in November, that concluded in November of 2023, I'm just going to share some highlights from that study where from our employers, we looked at inquiring about the notable strengths and weaknesses displayed by our graduates, their knowledge and skill competence, their professional growth potential, and how they compare to other graduates from the sector. So these employers from across 15 industry sectors were surveyed. And the 3 leading faculties from J-TEC from which they sourced employees were from the College of Business and Management, Faculty of Engineering and Computing, and the College of Health Sciences. And what we found was that 95% of the employers thought that the graduates were further trainable in their field of study at the workplace and readily embraced and adapted to the new technologies and innovations in order to enhance productivity. They also received quite a high rating for their technical competence. And this is just a graphic of the ratings. Over 92% found that they were technically competent, 94% that they were trainable, and about 89% found that they adapted well to new technologies and innovations. Their 3 best qualities: the ability to work autonomously as a team member, their analytical skills, and their professionalism. And the worst qualities: research skills, application of international standards, and effective oral communication skills. At J-TEC, we engage in employability performance measures, and I'm just sharing some of these. We track student performance. We look at the percentage of our graduates who are employed and the percentage employed in the area of study that they were engaged in. Also, graduation, completion, and retention rates. And we also have instructor module evaluations done annually or per semester. And we know, and I'm sure my colleague from the Ministry of Labor will share more on this, the future of work. And I know it's being driven by several factors. We know of digitization, climate change, etc. And businesses have been forced to become more innovative in their delivery of services. The future of work is also pointing to the need for employers to have employees with specific skill sets. They need to be tech savvy, creative, and adaptable. And also, opportunities for emerging jobs have been created, and I've shared some of the areas of focus, risk management specialists, etc. Just wrapping up my presentation and sharing a bit on the graduate employability strategies that we have been engaged in, and we're thinking they're quite apt for the higher education institutions. We know that our institutions have now witness an expanded role, the need to be flexible and adaptive in order for us to meet the demands of the labor market, the need for enhanced innovation and creativity so that we'll have an increase in productivity, global competitiveness, and wealth creation. We also need to assume a development and growth partner role to government, industry, and businesses in the marketplace. At UTEC, we engage in internships and exchanges for students as well as faculty members. And these internships are ingrained in our policies and standard operating procedures. We also seek university to university partnerships in selected areas, including the sharing of resources for mutual benefit. And we think these are critical employability strategies. Also, we engage in periodic conduct of market needs analyses and graduate perception surveys in order to remain relevant. And the engagement of industry specialists in the curricular review process and the completion of market assessments prior to introducing any new program, I think is critical to ensure our employability of our graduates. And also optimization of experiential learning through cooperative education, hands-on experiences, and internships are also some critical strategies to be engaged in. And I'm just going to wrap up here and thank you for your attention.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much for that wholesome presentation. I see where Dr. Stephen Carr has requested a copy of the slide showing UTEC history and offering. Very interesting presentation. From it, I would have seen where your survey would have covered 36 employers from 15 industry sectors. That may not seem like a significant number, but that's very significant. And, identifying the top qualities, ability to work autonomously, the professionalism. But I also like that you've identified the weaknesses, which one that I've also noticed is the communication aspects as well as the research skills, etc. So your presentation was very good, and I'll ask that persons here, if you have any questions, we save them until the end because we want to get through all the presenters, and then we'll do a full round of question and answer with all our panelists. All right, well, thank you so much for that presentation, and we'll see you again in the question and answer segment. All right. So I hope everyone enjoyed that first presentation. It was very insightful and it gave us that UTEC perspective, especially interested in the strategies that were identified. But we're going to change course a little bit, still on topic, but we go over now to Dr. Devon Smith, who will be telling us a bit about the UE perspective and developing a well-rounded UE graduate, the multidimensional approach. Now, Dr. Devon Smith is the Director of Office in the Office of Strategic Planning and Enterprise Management. And this office is pivotal in driving corporate strategy, planning transformation, risk and compliance, business continuity, and emergency management initiatives for the Mona campus. His experience and expertise cover strategic leadership, process engineering, project and risk management, as well as people management. He brings with him over 2 decades of dedicated service to the UE, and he has demonstrated exceptional leadership to deliver successful outcomes on projects totaling billions of dollars through several infrastructural transformation initiatives. Now, prior to his current appointment, Dr. Smith served in the dual role of estate manager for the Mona campus and manager of the campus projects office, where he sought to redesign the facilities management processes and operating model of the estate management department. Now, Dr. Smith also developed the campus master plan for 2016 to 2026, which aptly provides the strategic blueprint for the infrastructural growth and development of the UE Mona campus. So Dr. Smith holds a Doctor of Business Administration with specialization in project management from Walden University, a Master of Business Administration with specialization in management from Manchester Business School, and a Bachelor of Science in Construction Engineering and Management from the University of Technology. So we see some duality there as well. He's currently the chairman for United Way of Jamaica, and prior to this position, he served as the chairman of the Finance and Administration, as well as the Property Management Committee. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Devon Smith.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, and thanks for that very, very kind brief. I have a funny feeling that my office was the one who prepared all of that.
Oh, yes.
And let me also say, also add my own congratulations to my colleague, Mrs. Denise Stephanie Hamel. I think the presentation was well-rounded and quite insightful in showcasing certainly what what J-TEC is actually doing. I'm trying to get my slide up. Are you seeing it now?
Yes, I am seeing.
Okay, then good. All right, good. So as pointed out, my presentation is more or less a conversation. I'd rather to say a conversation rather than a presentation, looking at how to develop a well-rounded UWI graduate and looking at it from a multi-dimensional perspective. This is just the overview, the strategic plan, and how is it that we dovetail the strategic plan into how it is that we want to singularly get our chief customer, the students, to be at the cutting edge and be able to contribute to nation building, national development, be able to contribute to organized society. And of course, how it is that we have used research and tracking to do it, and some final tips and takeaway going forward. Just an overview. So the current strategic plan that we have is considered the revenue revolution. And that is what we would consider the part 2 of a 2-part series strategic plan. When we started, the first part of the strategic plan, what we looked at was reputational revolution. And what that means is how is it that UWI could actually be ranked, be graded against the world universities right across the rank. And this slide highlights when we started out and when we debuted in 2018, we were rated at the top 5% globally. Then the UWI rated among the top 4% in 2019. The first AAA came around the 2020, and I will talk about that shortly. And then we started our impact in ranking and the top 2.5% in 2021. And it continues. Currently, we are going through the review process, and what we're doing to time higher education institution. So this is our strategic framework that you're seeing there. And this strategic framework is certainly between 2022 to 2027. And what I pointed out to you earlier is the revenue revolution. And the whole idea is that we do recognize, everyone on this call recognize the challenges that public institution, public university face in terms of how is it that it can fund the enterprise. And what we recognize is that apart from getting the subvention from government, how is it that we can enable to drive our initiative so that we can generate revenues, and that revenue certainly will go towards enhancing the delivery of our students, because our core is ensuring that our teaching and research is at the pivotal and cutting edge in terms of innovation. So when you look at the framework, and we spoke about the various initiatives, the AAA strategies, etc., the ultimate is to really create that ideal graduate. And we have 7 areas in which we look at: a critical and creative thinker, effective communicator, IC skill and information, innovative, and of course, certainly entrepreneurial, globally aware and well-grounded in his or regional identity. And that is very, very, very important, especially what is happening. Certainly, we do recognize that you have globalization, right? But what we do recognize is that the regional impact of regionalization is now taking back the forefront. So we definitely need to ensure that we can identify as a regional citizen. socially, culturally, and environmentally responsible, and guided by the strong ethical values. And these are the 7 ideal characteristics that we use to actually guide and to establish how it is that we measure our students. Now, the adage that we still maintain, it takes a village. And through that, we have several initiative programs which we use to actually guide and to ensure that we can match up to those, or to ensure that those 7 characteristics are identified. So we have continual program reviews, and that is done through our quality assurance and accreditation. So with our quality assurance, what we have a quality review that we do at the end of each semester. So surveys would go out to the students, and they would actually review the course as well as the lecturers. And of course, we continue to participate in accreditation exercise to ensure that we are at the cutting edge in how is it that we are carrying out our program. The Center of Excellence, and that has to do with staff development. How is it that we continually train and improve our staff so that they are at the cutting edge? Of course, we do recognize here that AI is taking a pivotal role, and how is it that it impacts tertiary institutions. So that is now really a discussion point that is really going around. As I pointed out as well, the assessment of the course and lecturers as we go through. We have a very robust student support and enrichment service through the Office of Student Services and the Placement and Career Service. So what you will find is that, yes, you have the academic element, but to ensure to have that well-rounded student is that the Office of Student Services and Development plays a key role in providing all of those social construct that is required to make that well-rounded student going forward. So how is that all dovetail? My office is now responsible to ensuring that there is a robust tracking and monitoring of all those key initiatives to ensure that the ideal graduate students is established, is developed, and can go there and participate in society. So 2 elements that which really looks at it: the planning and institutional research, right? And it support the campus with baseline data, similar to what Mrs. Hamel spoke about, having data that can drive decisions. So rather than just being in terms of subjective viewpoints and what you feel and intuition, no, it is a matter of having the data and ensuring that that data can provide the right information so that the quality decisions can be made. And of course, we have the strategic project unit where once senior management and executive management identify key strategic initiative to bolster, to ensure that we can enhance the advancement of ensuring that students can meet those attributes, right? The strategic project unit is one of those units that help drive a number of those initiatives. So at the core of it is actually having a very robust monitoring and control mechanism in going forward. The institutional research, a number of the initiatives that we carry out to ensure that we have an understanding of what is happening with the student and how is that information can allow for decision making. So each year we carry out a student satisfaction survey. So that is usually done around March, April. And once we get that data and we analyze that data by around June, July, we have that the result. And certainly within the senior management, we can actually have a conversation. It's always that we can do some amount of improvement going forward. And of course, we have the tracer surveys of ensuring what is it that our graduate students are doing, where they are, how they are performing, compiling persistence and graduate rates. And this is particularly important, especially when you have a program for 3 years. And we recognize that a number of the programs that we have, students are not utilizing the 3 years, but they tend to go 4 years. So we need to deep dive to have a better understanding. What are the issues? What are the challenges that confronting the student? So that whatever it is that we can assist as an institution to ensure that they get out into the work world as quickly as possible. So the idea is not to have them retained and be detained within the system, but to find out what are some of the issues so that we can ensure that they can pursue in going forward. And of course, review of the pass failure rates in courses, and that is something that we track very well, and I have some data that I can provide to you. So the theoretical foundation of the student success is that though we recognize the socioeconomic status, they are correlated with the student outcome, the education environment have an impact in providing an environment that conducive for growth and development. So what does that mean? So we recognize that apart from the classroom setting, we recognize that experiential learning is very key and critical. And again, Mrs. Hamel spoke about it in part. So one thing that we do here at Mona is that we actually track some of the practicums and the fieldwork and the clerkships and internships that they will actually provide. So what you can see here, the data, which is showing over a 4-year period in how is it that we have been tracking. And you can see the percentage there in terms of the participation of the student in various apprentice programs, right? So as to ensure that not only the classroom engagement that they are getting, but they are getting real life experience in the various areas of studies. So this slide actually shows, and I do not want to keep it up much, but this is one of our tracking that we are doing in looking at how it is that they graduate by class of degree. And we recognize that our first class honors is with 14 and at the lower 12, upper second class honors, and of course lowest second class honors. We recognize that we have the data, we recognize how it is that we can deep dive, and we have other data that can will show some very interesting numbers and show how is it that a particular trend that we are seeing and a trend that we do not particularly like seeing. So we are now actively in engagement through Mona Academic Leadership Team in how is it that we can strategize in moving the upper second class, right, to the upper first class, and the upper first class to the first class honors. And these are conversations that we have started to have based on the data that we have been providing to the senior management and the executive leadership team. And of course, we have the graduate degree by class there as well. And as I said, further deep dive into these figures provide some really revealing information that we are actually using now, or is it that we can really strategize going forward. Again, here, the graduates by the class of degree for doctoral, and of course, we recognize that there's issues with having that low amount for high commendation, and how is it that we can see how we can actually move those forward. So that set of slides actually provides how it is that we have been tracking over a 3, 4, 5-year period, and further deep dive in how it is that we can extract information to guide our process. And one of the tools that we are actually using is Power BI, Power Business Intelligence. A very powerful tool, and once you actually input the data, then you can interrogate the data and extract the information that you need. Another study that we do is a tracer survey, and this highlights, and certainly the Ministry of Labour will find this very welcome, but the employment rate of the first and higher degree, what we have there is over a 3-year period. So this tracer survey was the class of 2022. Right, and then usually what we do, we go a 2-year thereafter to get the information. So it's a class of 2022, class of 2020, and class of 2018, and you can see that it is in the high mid to high 80s and upwards. Right, I suspect that in 2018, that 68% there would have been around the COVID time period there. But again, we can interrogate, further deep dive and interrogate the data to ensure, to find out exactly what is happening there. This also would be very useful for the Ministry of Labour if they are on. But what this data is showing us is that certainly in the graduate level, or the undergraduate, I should start with first, I beg your pardon, you tend to find many of them go within the financial institution. And certainly graduate level, they are more or less focused on within the education sector. And what we do, the 5 field that we have here is actually from starting, right? So further breakout could have easily be taken to understand in terms of the various categories of education, and certainly the various categories of financial institution there. So this gives you an idea of exactly where the UA graduates are located in the various sectors right across the society. One thing that we do as part of our tracer survey is to find out their level of job satisfaction. And what I am happy to say here, that though we believe that money, our salary, and the associated benefits is the ideal. One thing that another thing that came out of the survey is job security, job location, intellectual challenge, the level of responsibility. So what you can see there is more or less the intangible, to some extent, or to a large extent, I should say, rather than the tangible, which would be like salaries and other things. So what this is showing is that once you can provide that level of an environment that will allow them to excel, an environment that will allow them to grow, right? That is what the UWI student, based on the survey that we have done. Another survey that we have done is that when they come in, again, a part of the attributes that I've highlighted earlier is at the start of the program, they are given the survey, and at the end of it, you can see the numbers, the corresponding numbers of the program. So the critical and creative thinking skills, the first degree, when they came in, they were at 40%. And at the end of that period, when they graded themselves, they were at 63%. And you can see the figures going down. I'm going to just wrap up in another few minutes here because I think I've just passed my time. Further studies of the respondents, one thing that we have discovered is that many of the students, once they leave, these numbers actually show up a number of the students returning to actually pursuing further course of studies. And as you can see, the masters being the predominant one at 50%. So once they have completed their undergrad, they usually tend to move on to graduate studies. And what you're seeing there as well is some amount going into other professional. And one thing that we have discovered, that other qualification we have recognized, and I suspect J-TEC as well, is that there's a strong intake now for short courses, non-credential courses, so as to ensure that they can enhance their performance on the job. And so that is now on the right. So these are key information that institution can utilize in how is it that they can better position themselves to enhance students' education. So not much further to add where the data is concerned, but just provide some final tips that they compete in influence on the growth and development of students. What is important is that not only to have the classroom setting, but to also ensure that you have experiential learning, providing the necessary complement to it. And what that will do is to ensure that you provide that well-rounded student in going forward. You have recognized that in prior times that a predominance of the classroom learning has not been most ideal. So having that well-rounded, not only the active, but the experiential learning, that will certainly provide some usefulness. Employers also have a role to play in the development of the human capital. We have conducted some tracer surveys and further deep dive, it recognized some of the issues on the employer side that they can actually offer to enhance the students upon leaving into the workforce and in going forward. And of course, citizens also have a role to play through the penance of lifelong learning. So that in a nutshell is my presentation, and I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. Another insightful presentation there. I see that we're now up to 40 participants. So if you're just coming in, we're here for the J-TEC Go Higher webinar, Navigating Graduate Employability, Best Practices and Strategies. And if you missed Dr. Smith's presentation or Mrs. Hamill's presentation earlier, don't worry, you'll get a chance to catch up with them in the question and answer segment. But for Dr. Smith's presentation, he touched on a lot of things, including the approach of the UA, which is to see the students as the chief customer, the ideal UA graduate, and the 7 ideals for that ideal UA graduate. So speaking on critical and creative thinking, communication, among other things, with you in the question and answer segment.
Okay.
All right, so we move now to our third presenter, who is none other than Mrs. Simone Mackenzie Mayer. So Mrs. Simone Mackenzie Mayer is an experienced professional in social and economic research in the field of labor and social protection. Mrs. Mackenzie Mayer is committed to the provision of evidence-based data information to drive policy development in Jamaica. Her knowledge and skills in these areas have been honed over time through 25 years of research experience and an academic background in economics and mathematics. Mrs. Mackenzie Mayer holds a Master of Science degree in economics and a Bachelor of Science degree honors in the areas of mathematics and chemistry from the University of the West Indies. As the Director of Research and Analysis in the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, Mrs. Mackenzie Mayer has been tasked with the responsibility of designing, coordinating, and completing research projects. Among her achievements are the execution of the impact study on Canadian farm workers, profile of absent without leave AWOL overseas workers, the conceptualization of the labor market intelligence segment of the Labor Market Information System, LMIS, and establishing partnership with the Jamaica Library Service, JLS, for the dissemination labor market intelligence island-wide. Now, Mrs. Mackenzie Mayer has been instrumental in collecting data while working overseas and has participated in international training and workshops to improve the skills base of the research unit within the ministry. Mrs. Mackenzie Mayer has also worked as a statistician in the National Accounts section of at the Statistical Institute of Jamaica Statin, during which her knowledge and use of statistical software was sharpened. She also worked at the Urban Development Corporation of Jamaica, at which time her research contribution led to the enhancement and development of tourism and housing facilities. So please join me in welcoming our third presenter, Mrs. Simone Mackenzie Mayer.
Thank you, Brittany. Yes. Yes, thank you, Brittany, for that introduction.
You're
Good
welcome.
morning. Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Yes, are you seeing the presentation?
I'm not seeing anything on my end as yet. It's coming up as a dark screen.
Okay. Yes. It's okay. Are you seeing it now?
Not seeing it here. Checking with my J-TEC team. Oh, I'm seeing it now. Yes, it's up.
Okay, thank you. Right, so in today's presentation, I'll be looking at the current situation of the labor market and also the type of workers which are required in the labor market. What does the Jamaican labor market look like at this time? Now, based on data from the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, we are seeing where the labor force from the last survey in April 2024 comprised 1.5 million. And this is just around 50% of the population. We're also seeing where the proportion of males in the labor force is 53.2% compared to 46.8% females. In terms of the participation rate, males outpace females, and that's almost 3/4 of the males are in the participate in the labor market compared to 63.6% females. And that gives rise to 68.9%. Jamaica is now experiencing a low unemployment rate, and we are seeing where the employment rate was 95.8% in April 2024, as against for the unemployment rate 4.2%. In terms of unemployment rate for male-female dynamics, male was 3.3% versus females 5.3%. As it relates to youth unemployment, we're seeing where youth unemployment rate in April 2024, this year was 14.8%, and for male, it was 13.6% lower than female, which was 16.4%. And this group of persons, this group of youth not in employment or education or training, it's very important to note here that our males outrank females in this section. So we had 48,700 males who were not in employment or education or training, as against 45,100 females. And the males comprised 19.4% of those who were in the need compared to 18.8%. And these were youths. Who are the workers that are required in the labor market? Our unit, the Planning, Research, and Monitoring Unit, we derive this information based on various studies, national studies in terms of the National Labor Market Survey. We also do sector studies, and we have done one last year, the Artificial Intelligence in Jamaica study, and we also did a study on job shortages. The ministry is also responsible for regulating the employment agencies, and they give us information on various types of jobs that they would have gotten for persons who register, job seekers. And so the ministry is responsible for registering these agencies, and the information provided to us is also offered by the ministry. We also monitor our work permits, which are granted to sort of get an idea as to the areas in need. And of course, we look at analysis of job vacancies from the newspaper and the public sector. Right, so in terms of our leading vacancies based on the advertisement in the newspaper, you're seeing here, we have the top 20 jobs from our analysis in 2023. And as you would expect, teachers top the list. And of course, these areas of need are mathematics teachers, English language teachers, literature, and science subjects teachers. Managers were next, and in this case, you had mostly general and operations manager. Also included, and I want you to note this, in 19, you had the engineers, many mechanical, civil, and structural engineers. Then also the nurses, registered nurses and registered midwives. Also, at number 9 spot, you have technicians, and these technicians include laboratory technicians, computer technicians, and so on. Sales representative, and of course at 11 you have drivers, truck drivers in particular, clerks, accounting clerks, receivable senior accounting clerks, etc. Right, so as you prepare, as university students prepare for the labor market, it is very important that they are cognizant of the future of work. I think our previous speaker, Ms. Hamill, has introduced that area in her presentation. But just as a definition, the future of work refers to the anticipated changes in the way we work and the evolving dynamics of the labor market. And we are seeing where the factors that influence the future of work include technology advancement in terms of automation and digitization. And of course, the applications include artificial intelligence and automation of systems you would see the banking with the ATMs, government. I think the tax office has now led the way in terms of some of the services that they are offering online. And then there are other business services. Globalization is also another area. And we are seeing the rapid movements of goods and e-commerce, shipping and logistics. In terms of the demographic shifts, we are now experiencing aging population in Jamaica, where our fertility rate has declined, and on the flip side, our mortality rate has increased. And so you have persons being older in the labor market, and this has implications for pension schemes and so on. In terms of, there's also a change in work patterns where you have there's a greater desire for work-life balance. People want more flexibility. And of course, the internet allows for persons to work online. Then there is, and nobody from this island would escape this, especially this year, climate change. Last year, I think the temperature was much higher, but we have an effect known as heat stress, that persons who work outside, such as farmers or construction workers, they're very vulnerable to heat stress. And then, you also have the hurricane and droughts. And so we have to be mindful of how the houses are now constructed. Engineers have to think about the cooling effect of buildings. Also, with the flooding, we now have to look at constructing roads inland instead of along the coast, right? And building bridges, overhead bridges. As you would know, the traffic, that's something everybody is talking about now, and the conditions of the road. Then there is also the concept of green economy, right? So what are some of the future of work occupations? And if you would notice, the future of work is here, because if you had noted before that among the top 10 occupations, you would have seen some of these, especially the engineers and the technicians. But we still have with us the clerks. And I know that, for example, in terms of upskilling, you would expect, for example, bank tellers and related clerks to upskill, also the cashiers and those persons who work in the assembly and in the manufacturing sector as assembly and factory workers. So they would need to upskill because of the prospects for robotics. Right. So what are the current growth sectors? So we would have seen where the digital economy in Jamaica is taking off, and the cybersecurity, green economy, as was mentioned before. But in Jamaica, there's also the business process outsourcing and the health sector and the education sector. So those are the growth areas that we are seeing in Jamaica at this time. So in terms of the information technology, the types of jobs for the digital economy include software developers, mobile app developers, and we've seen where a lot of young persons are now gravitating towards these types of jobs and are making business, creating businesses from these jobs. So you also have digital specialists, data administrators, IT technicians, and IT support persons. So with the increased use of technology, companies have been focusing on safeguarding their operations due to the threat of cyber crime. So now you will need like security engineers, threat intelligence analysts, security administrators, cybercrime analysts, etc. So in terms of the green economy, the green economy involves the efficient use of energy, reducing pollution emissions, and use of renewable sources of power. And the green economy represents new avenues for skill development. I don't know if you are aware of the Just Transition project being led by the ILO, and Jamaica will be involved in that project pretty soon. In terms of the green economy, we have, again, the need for engineers, conservation scientists, organic farmers, solar installers. And in terms of there's wind farm would need a lot of engineers, structural, civil, turbine, geophysical, mechanical, and utility, electrical, environmental engineer. So for the skills in the green economy, it would be safe to invest in, say, waste management, hydroponics and greenhouse technology, integration of energy system, energy auditing, environmental engineer, and so on. Now, in looking at the other growth sector, which is a global service, or what we call BPO, we are seeing where the global sector has expanded in Jamaica. And here in Jamaica, there are over 70 companies that offer BPO services. And if you look at this graph, we would have started here at 17,000 employees in 2015, and this has ballooned to over 60,000 in 2023. Among the type of jobs needed are operation team leaders, information technology workers, call center workers, and again, you're seeing here IT technicians. So there's prospects for knowledge process outsourcing, and we're seeing where the knowledge process outsourcing is estimated to reach US $124 billion by 2025. And some examples of knowledge process outsourcing tasks include research, data analysis, financial services, legal services, and engineering design. Now, occupations for knowledge process outsourcing include legal consultants, legal analysts, financial consultants, human resource staff, software engineers. Now, based on our study done this year on job worker shortages in Jamaica, we found that worker shortage is a reality. And this is shown in almost all the sectors. And in particular, we're seeing where agriculture is being affected, transportation, shipping, hospitality, and tourism. You would have seen what is happening in terms of hospitality and tourism in the recent news. There's also education, as you would have known, and health, construction, and financial services. Right, so in terms of the demand for health workers, and you would have seen where this was also among the top 20 jobs. Just to give you an idea of the statistics here, we're seeing where we have the latest statistics we have was for 2022 when 166 health workers had migrated between January and December 2022. And the World Health Organization has indicated that the number of doctors and nurses for a population of 1,000, required for a population of 1,000, are 2.7 physicians and 7.1 nurses and midwives. And of course, Jamaica has 0.6 physician and 1 nurse and midwife per 1,000 persons. And when we look at the countries where we are actually migrating to, they have, UK has 2.8 physicians and 8.5 nurses. So we'll see where UK has just about surpassed the number of physicians and have not surpassed the number of nurses. In the case of US, we are seeing where the physician is 2.6 physicians, just a little below, but they have now surpassed the mark of 15.4 nurses and midwives. So in terms of the health sector, we have picked up some of the most, the areas that are most challenging in terms of the registered nurses, pharmacists, radiologists, and technicians, diagnostic technicians. So now we are looking at labor shortages in agriculture. Some of them you would know, the challenges in terms of work attitude and disinterest among youths to really enter the agricultural field. And also there's an increased demand for higher wages and lack of mechanization. If you are aware, well, in Jamaica, we are our hilly terrain. We have most of our farmers operate in the hilly terrain of Jamaica. And, you know, they have issues with mechanization. Also, they face competition from the other sectors, such as the construction and tourism sector. And what we found with the job shortage among the agricultural sector is that it is really sort of crippling in that it affects from the lower land preparation personnel straight up to the farm managers. So there is an issue there. You know, there's also the issue of spraymen. They're having difficulty getting persons who, you know, can apply chemicals for crops and safe handling of pesticides. And that is a challenge because we don't want that in our food chain. So this is, and soil health experts, etc. slaughterhouse persons do slaughterhouse maintenance. So another area is the transport and shipping. And we are seeing where there is a challenge with competition from other sectors such as construction and the BPO. And we have here that persons are migrating to other countries that offer better wages, such as Canada. And there's a relatively low wage within the industry. Some years ago, everybody wanted to work in that sector. Now the wages have somewhat fallen. So then there is the issue where you have an increase in logistic activities, including car transshipment, and this has heightened the need for skilled workers. And some of the workers that are needed here are port workers, again, engineers coming up, mechanics, electricians, painters. As a matter of fact, they have to import labor for this area for the engineers and the mechanics and the electricians. All right, so in terms of the tourism and hospitality, of course, there is also the competition from other industries that offer higher wages and more stable work, right? Again, from the BPOs. And of course, there is also the issue of migration of the talent pool. Then there is the sector's reliance on temporary seasonal workers. And of course, within all of that, there's still expansions of hotels and resorts and attractions. So you're seeing where there is a great need for workers in this area too. And you would have heard some of the hotel workers saying that they have to be, doing more jobs than they should. Some persons are saying that they're overworked. Right, so there's a challenge there. Now you have tourism, and in terms of tourism and hospitality, we are seeing where there's a need for bartenders, front desk operators, events managers, chefs, hotel managers, and housekeepers. So now we're at the point where we're looking at the construction sector. And of course, again, migration of skilled labor to higher paying sectors or different countries are playing a role in the shortages. And there's a lack of formal certification among many of these workers, despite having the necessary skills. There's also an increased activity in construction projects driven by both public and private sector investments. And then, there should be a focus on training and certification of workers in the modern construction methods and technology. And some of these persons include the crane operators, skilled block layers, general laborers are also an issue, and across the board for even other sectors such as the wholesale and retail sectors. They cannot find anybody to do lifting and so on. There's also site managers, an issue with shortage there. Of course, there is the issue of the fast food services. And of course, you have very high turnover rates due to competition from other sectors. This sector is a low wage sector, and it, with limited benefits, and it make it hard to attract and retain workers. The demanding nature of the work, coupled with the limited opportunities for career advancement, cause persons to leave that sector. And of course, we know that customer service training is greatly needed in this area based on the service we get. Some of the jobs that are needed include restaurant managers. Of course, there's the need for customer service workers, delivery riders, food preparation workers, and farmers of livestock cattle, and vegetables. So they are needed to supply the fast food services. There is also the issue in the financial sector, where in particular credit unions, with an increased preference among professionals for remote work. And this happens after the pandemic, where persons would have gotten accustomed to working remotely, and they would have left the financial sector to take on consultancy roles. And well, we're looking at construction now, but this also happened in other sectors. For example, it happened for the household services, where there was a mass exodus of household helpers during the pandemic, and as a result, they found out that they could do other type of work, and so some of them are creating their own businesses, etc. And also for the hotel. Another issue with the financial sector is that they are migrating to other islands or countries that offer better salaries and benefits. And there's competition from other financial institutions, such as the banks and so on, that offer more attractive compensation. And these persons that are in need, these occupations include financial controllers, accountants, loan officers, and wealth managers. Right. We are at that point where we are looking at the employability skills that are needed by employers. So based on our advert of the job that we analyze from the advertisements and our various sources, we have been able to find out that in terms of the employability skills, that employers need persons with people skills, being able to communicate, participate in teamwork, time management, emotional intelligence, having empathy, and having social media literacy. Of course, the other skills include the literacy and numeracy, critical thinking, being analytic, etc. Right, so that would take me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Mrs. Mackenzie Mayer. Give me 1 second here. All right, great. So that was another deep and insightful presentation there from our third presenter, Director of Research and Analysis in the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. I see the numbers are up again. We're at 45. So again, welcome everyone. This is our research webinar for J-TEC Week, and we are delving into the topic of navigating graduate employability, best practices and strategies. So we've gone through 3 presentations. As it relates to the third one, we would have touched on the Ministry of Labor and Social Security's perspective into some information on the Jamaican labor force, employability, national employability versus youth employability, the future of work, increase in demand in different areas, especially where it relates to IT, big data, data analysis, tech, the green economy, which is another developing topic as it relates to how we can prepare persons for the green economy and the change in that workforce. We also did a deeper dive into the various sectors such as health, tourism, and hospitality, construction, fast food, all of that. And we saw where the employability skills, which would have been presented by our first 2 presenters as well, they overlapped. So it's clear that there is a set standard that is expected of our graduates when they enter the world of work. So I hope everyone is enjoying the discussion so far. I see Dr. Carr asking Mrs. Mayer to share the AI sector study with the Ministry of Education. Definitely, that knowledge base is very important. And Dr. Carr, I see your hand. I'll take your question in 1 second. I'm going to ask my J-TEC team to post a survey to the chat now to our viewers who are here on the Zoom platform. My apologies. We're going to ask you to complete this poll so that we can get your feedback. It's an evaluation for J-TEC Week, this particular event, the research forum. We love your feedback so that we can see how we can improve and utilize the data to the best of our abilities. So I re-invite Mrs. Denise Stevenson Hamill, Dr. Devon Smith, Mrs. Simone Mackenzie Mayer, and we have another addition to the panel, Mr. Shane Palmer. He won't be presenting, but he's available to answer questions on behalf of the Ministry of Labor as well. And yes, the poll is up, and I will give everyone a few seconds to answer. And then Dr. Carr, I'll take your question as soon as we do this poll. So I'll give it about a minute, then we get right back. All right, so that poll has ended. We don't have all our responses yet, but I see a few of the responses there. I will ask the J-TEC team to repost at the end of our question and answer segment so we can get some more feedback. All right, so Dr. Carr, I see your hand up. You may go ahead with your first question.
So my first question has to do with the fact that UE and J-TEC does this marvelous marketing research and research on students and graduate tracer studies. And I've worked in the system for over 25 years, and these are the only two schools that I've found to do something of this nature. And wondering whether J-TEC, in their wisdom going forward, would take this on a national level to not only have UTEC and UE doing this, and as well as they doing it for all other, maybe over 40 or more institutions in Jamaica. So that's one of the things I want to go forward, whether J-TEC is having on their operational plans similar marketing research on behalf of all tertiary institutions. So that was my first point. My second point had to do with UTEC. Dr. Denise, my good friend. Do you track how long after graduation are students employed? So a typical success indicator would be that your graduate got a job within 3 months of graduation or got a promotion within 6 months of graduation. Those are important indicators of success, and you might want to look at that going forward to have a track as to say, hey, we can attest to the quality of our work because our graduates were able to land a job within 3 months. All right, so that's my second question. My third question had to do with UE, and I wanted to have a feel of the response rate. So you have 2,000 students graduating every year from UE or from UE. What percentage of those students respond to your marketing survey? What is the response rate in terms of how many students responded that they're now working, etc.? Those are 3 questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Carr. All right. So in response to your first question targeted at J-TEC, I see Ms. Tracy Ann Smith responding to say, yes, J-TEC will be conducting a graduate tracer study in 2025. And I believe the team will be working to see if this is something that they can continue going forward. So again, good example there coming out of the UE, and it's definitely something to consider for the future of the testing and tracing of graduates and just employability in general. well. Regarding your second question, directed to J-TEC, how long after graduation are persons employed? I'll invite Mrs. Stevenson Hamill to respond.
Hi, thank you. And good to see you, Dr. Carr, Stephen, and Mrs. Mayer. Long time. But in response to your question, your query, we are tracking. I know annually we track our graduates who would have been in the labor market for about 3 months. All right. So we have that ongoing exercise, but periodically we would contract a more longer term tracer study of graduates who would have been in the marketplace for at least 3 years. So the study I highlighted in the presentation looked at 3 cohorts of graduates who would have been, I think it was 2018, 19, and 21. They would have graduated. So they would have been in the labor market for some time. All right.
All right. Thank you so
And
much.
our intent going forward is to have those longitudinal tracer studies done, say, biennially. But I'm looking for collaboration here because I think in sharing resources, we'll be better able to get more of these studies done.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much for your response. And I believe as well, part of his recommendation is to have a question specific to how long after. So say you would have mentioned that persons would have been in the labor market for as early as 3 months or 3 years, etc. But to say, okay, how long between graduation date of July 2024, for example, up to your date of employment, that kind of gap, just to show the progress as to how quickly persons are getting jobs. Because I know a part of the concern, which I have had in my year group as well, is that persons have been struggling to find jobs, not only within a 6-month period, for example, but jobs in their area of study as well. So I think specific questions to target those kind of responses would also be good for the study. All right, thank you so much.
And if I may quickly add,
yes,
we're
sure.
also looking too at persons graduating who would have been employed prior to,
nice.
coming to the university. So they would have been employed. So again, tracking their promotional growth, if you want to put it that way, would be of interest too.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mrs. Stevenson Hamill. And the third question was related to UE, the UE. So I'll go to Dr. Smith. And it was, what percentage of persons generally respond to the survey? So I know you would have shared an overview of your survey. I'm not sure if you can pull on that to respond to this one directly, but in general, what percentage of persons generally respond to the survey?
All right, thanks very much for that, Madam Moderator. Before I respond to the third question, that question, I want to expound a bit on, I think, if my memory is right, Dr. Stephen is his name, ask. I get the impression as well that he's of the view that beyond the engagement with UE and J-TEC in this type of forum is to have other institutions participating. And I think that is where it's going. And I think that if that is where you're going, Dr. Stephen, I think that is very useful. Just this morning, there was an article out of the UK BBC News, which says, highlighting the concern regarding tertiary level education, that they are going to be losing out in very short order because the revenue is really, really drying up. And how it is that you can really continue with the engagement is really through partnership and collaboration. So I think through that lens, J-TEC, could certainly look at how other institutions can come together and merge. So and collaborate. I mean, not merge, but collaborate. I beg your pardon on that. So with respect to the respondent rate, I do not have the document in front of me, but generally speaking, we have had a low of 20% and a high of not exceeding 30% in terms of the response rate. Sadly, though, we did another survey. We did a survey just last year. I can't remember the name of it. I was a bit distracted. And the response rate was about 10%, and we consider it very low. And we are looking at strategies. How is it that we can really get the engagement of graduates out there who are in the working world? But more importantly as well is how is it that we can get the engagement of students right here on campus? in participating in many of our surveys, for example, the student satisfaction surveys. So I've come up with strategies, little motivation, tokens and stuff like that, that we can provide to them. So I hope that answers your question, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Smith. And I hope as well the question was answered, Dr. Carr. I'm not seeing where he went.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, good to go.
Yeah.
Yes, good to go. All right, excellent.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
All right, the floor is open for more questions, but in the meantime, I have a question for both our university representatives. As it relates to the curricula, because we noticed that there are specific criteria that employers are looking for students or for graduates from particular institutions and the industry. But do you believe that the curricula that is presented by your institution is actually aligned with today's industry needs? And if not, or if so, can you describe how the universities are aligning these curricula with the industry needs of today? So I'll start with, I heard this Dr. Smith a while ago, so I'll go back to Mrs. Stevenson-Hamill first, and then we come back to Dr. Smith to respond.
Thank you for that, Ms. Moderator. Just to share that we have in each of our faculties or colleges, we have groups or committees that have representation from the sector being served. So valuable feedback is received through these representatives that would help to inform decisions re curricula. Right? So that is one. And also, I'm just thinking, yeah. So those are important. And whenever new programs are to be introduced, it is a policy requirement that there's an engagement of a sector study, right? So information will be critical to guide the new programs being introduced. So that is what we do. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Dr. Smith, your response?
Yeah, thanks very much. So just the last point that Mrs. Hamel made about sector review is very important. So what we do here is we have a program review. I think it's about 3 or 4 years, looking at what it is that is being offered and if it is certainly relevant to industry. So take, for example, the Faculty of Social Sciences. What they will do is to engage industry, find out what is the current trends taking place there. And then that will enable them to inform how it is that adjustment to the programs. Once that is done, then it goes through a quality review, checks and balance to ensure the robustness of what it is that is being presented. So certainly for Faculty of Social Science and other faculties, and in fact, Faculty of Engineering is actually currently going through a similar exercise, engaging industry and finding out exactly what industry requires. And that is one thing that had been highlighted is a number of professionals. They want to upskill, certainly, for example, where technology is concerned, how is it that they can upskill so that they can meet the need? In Faculty of Medicine, Medical Sciences, they have the usual preclinical training, and then you go in your specialized area, but then you may need to upskill to provide a particular procedure. So these are things that we do to ensure that, the relevance to the various sectors.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Smith. All right, so we heard mention of policy. I'm not seeing any more hands as yet. Oh, there's a hand here from from Mrs. Smith or Miss Smith, Tracy Ann Smith from J-TEC. You may jump on with your question.
All right, thank you so much, Brittany. A wonderful presentation by our panel this morning. I definitely will be re-listening to the presentation because I got several insights from our presenters. I would like to just touch a little bit on underemployment. I know that Dr. Smith had shared in terms of the employment of graduates from the University of the West Indies. We have the high 80s, high 90s. But what I also picked up from the data that he shared was that one of the issues that students have a challenge with is salary. So are we having an issue with underemployment? Are students overqualified? Well, yes, they might get the jobs, but the salary does not match in terms of their expertise and qualifications. The other question, I think, well, this can also be on the part of the institution as well as the Ministry of Labor. We are seeing challenges in several sectors. But one of them that really jumped out at me is healthcare and education. We need a healthy society. We need an educated society. And if we are experiencing a bleed, a loss of critical healthcare workers and our educators, what can be done on the part of the institutions to ensure that our society remains healthy and educated? And that was just what are some of the recommendations by the Ministry of Labor to ensure that we, have a gap in that regard.
Okay, thank you so much. So we bring on our representatives from well, that's Dr. Smith, that's for you, but I'm not sure if Mrs. Mackenzie Mayer or Mr. Palmer would like to add as well. So Dr. Smith, over to you.
All right. So, Miss Smith, you asked a very interesting question in terms of the salaries, if what they are actually receiving. If I hear in part, there's a little bang in my background. So if I hear in part is if the salary is in alignment with their academic qualification. And my short answer to that is I think we need to really do some further deep dive, and I will explain to you. I'm actually looking at the data here, and I must tell you that I had it to present, and I need to just do some validation before this goes on. But what I'm seeing here is that there is a large percentage between the 200 and 300,000 and 300 to 400,000 dollars in terms of the salary scale. So you would find a significant of the percentile in that quadrant. Now, what we need to do now is to do further deep dive, and chances are we have the data here, just a matter of just doing further deep dive and to find out which sectors and in terms of years of experience and so it really needs further analysis, and perhaps that would be required for another conversation. But it's a real issue, because when I saw this data, I am saying that I think that we need to interrogate the data some more to really find out what is the true position, or what is reflected here, if that is what is really dictating out there.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Smith and Ms. Smith, for that question. Any response from Ministry of Labor? So Mrs. Mackenzie Mayer or Mr. Palmer, would you like to weigh in on this hot topic of underemployment? All right.
Hi, morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Shane Palmer here. All right. So while there's the issue of or potentially there's an issue of underemployment, the whole issue of salary is a sore point, as was mentioned in several sectors. But what we are also seeing is that graduates are coming out of university. Employers are complaining that graduates are coming out of university, and because they have a first-class honors or based on their qualification, it automatically commands a certain level of salary, and there's this high expectation. While this is not so. So beyond the technical abilities, the employers are also stressing the soft skills, which are very, very important in modern society. And these skills, such as the whole teamwork, communication, problem-solving skills, critical thinking skills, and adaptability skills are very important. And employers are looking for persons with these skills so that they can work in a cohesive working environment, because this is very important to improve productivity within the labor market. So it's not just about thinking that your qualification can bring you that high level of salary. It's how you are able to adapt yourself and function within that team and within a system within the labor market. So I want to implore graduates to be very, very mindful of that and how is it that you conduct yourself within the interview, not just based on your qualification, is how you will be able to present and market yourself within the labor market.
All right,
Also,
thank you.
yeah, man. Also, you mentioned the whole issue of migration for skilled workers. So the thing is, though, migration is not something that we can stop, really. At the end of the day, our labor market cannot absorb everybody. So if everybody was to stay, we could not absorb everybody, right? So, but the thing is that it is always important, though, for us to continue to invest in training persons, right? So we can provide incentives to persons for persons to be trained within the labor market driven fields, whether it is in the health sector or in the education sector. So that is one of the things we can do. We can provide incentives for persons who are doing training within these programs to ensure that we are always providing or spitting out the type of graduates that would be needed within the labor market, so to sort of to reduce that gap. Because one of the things that we're finding is that because there's that sort of disconnect, there is the potential for employers to be bringing in foreign workers to fill some of these positions because some of the skill set are not here. So it's not only that that persons are migrating, but in some areas the skill set are just not present. So we need to be constantly aware of what is happening in the labor market and the needs of the labor market, and ensure that our graduates, the skill set that we are producing from our graduates, are in line with the labor market needs.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Palmer. And it's a good point that you mentioned there, that the expectation is, okay, I have this degree at this level, I'm expecting X amount of pay, but at the end of the day, as you mentioned, it also speaks to the on the ground in terms of the soft skills as well as the experience, because a lot of the jobs as well do require a level of experience, though in some cases a little I would say extreme in the sense that a university graduate may not necessarily have a 3-year experience, but they'll have the degree. So that often results in a lot of graduates going into entry-level jobs and starting from the lower end, moving up. And that oftentimes tends to be not the ideal, but again, it's the reality of the workforce, and you have to consider several factors. I see Brittany Logan in the chat saying, our problem as graduates really is the amount of work required of us to do versus the pay. We always do our research, and we also know what the gross salary is for our post, so it leaves us uncertain about going forward. Additionally, entry-level post versus what is required of us to do not always align with each other. And again, that is also a point, because what is entry-level versus, taking on all the responsibilities for minimal pay? Dr. Smith, did you want to weigh in on that comment or the response, or are we?
Yeah,
okay.
I want to give a personal comment on this. I know that a number of many students, when they leave, there is this huge expectation that you should be compensated at a rate. And you're right, you would have done your investigation and say the rate or the range or scale. What is important as graduates, and I participate in mentorship programs, is not necessarily, and the data shows it, not focusing on the salary or the compensation. And I think I made mention of it in my presentation, but to see how quickly you can enter the work world and absorb all the relevant experience to put you on that track for upward mobility. So and this is my personal view now, that I don't think that, and it's quite controversial, I know, in some quarters, I don't think that the primary focus, and the data shows it, that the primary should be on the compensation. It should be in terms of building, getting the necessary experience, and then you move on to your upward mobility.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Smith, for that weigh in. Mrs. Stevenson Hamill, I see you have opened.
Yes, and just a comment I wanted to make. Read the growth sectors. We mentioned health. I think as public tertiary institutions, more investment, I think, is needed to facilitate graduates in these critical areas, because as it relates to the facilities and equipment and even the human resources needed to train more persons in these critical areas, I think the support is not as adequate from the government, for example. So more could be done.
More could be done. Thank you so much, Mrs. Stevenson Hamill. And I'm happy that you mentioned that point, because it leads me to my next question, again directed to the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, regarding the policies or programs that are in place to support recent graduates in their transition to the workforce. And touching back on the note that Ms. Smith would have mentioned about the migration of persons specifically in healthcare and education, what are the provisions in place or policies in place to support them? And are there any initiatives in place now to improve the resources that are available for persons to work in ideal and healthy working environments that are conducive to growth in these industries? So I'll again direct that to Mr. Palmer or Mrs. Mackenzie Mayer.
Yes, good morning again. Right, so the Ministry of Labor has what is known as a labor market information system, and there is a job matching component to it operated by the Electronic Labor Exchange. Now, the system is online at www.lmis.gov.jm. So job seekers can register on the system in order to be able to be matched with employers. We also have regularly per quarter job fairs. As a matter of fact, there is an upcoming job fair in St. Anne. Next week, right? So you can participate in that by registering on the LMIS system. As it is now, the LMIS is being enhanced and to provide more labor market intelligence and to be able to match the workers, job seekers better to the employers. And this is being done by the Sparrow program. So aside from that, there is also the assistance with various grants for persons with disabilities and also for persons who are on path through the Steps to Work program, right? And also there is a social intervention program that offers persons grant if you want to venture into entrepreneurship, we assist with that, right? So those are some of the programs that we have within the ministry right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The other part of the question was in relation to, well, on the note of the migration or loss of persons in healthcare or education rather, were there any initiatives in place to see how best we can improve the resources for them as well, or not, or what's the take from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, especially with the feedback now on the state of the industry and why persons opt to leave for what they define as greener pastures?
Well, I am not aware of anything, any policy being done in that regards. I know that there is the plans to have further partnership with public service, the government agencies on a whole to dive deeper into data with respect to getting more numbers so we can do more forecasting and so on. From that side, we would be able to monitor that area to provide more evidence-based driven information. Then there's an issue with work permits, where the ministry has certain skills that are in demand that we track, and we do, as you would see, that in response to some of these shortages, that work permits are granted to say teachers, engineers, nurses, certain doctors, and so on. So we assist in that regard.
All right, thank you so much for your response. And do we have any other questions coming from the viewers here? Again, if you're just coming in, we're here for the J-TEC Week Research Webinar. And again, we are discussing the topic of navigating graduate employability, best practices and strategies. So we've touched on a lot of information. There's so much to digest, but of course, our panelists have been giving us some really good insights from the university perspective as well as the national perspective through the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. So I'm not seeing any more questions from the audience, but I do have another. Oh, I see you, Ms. Smith. You may go ahead.
Right, I wanted to give our viewers a chance to ask some questions, but since hands raised, the institutions mentioned a couple of initiatives that they use to enhance graduate employability, using research studies, student satisfaction, the relevant committees and such. I wanted to find out, in terms of the role of the donors, funders at the institutions, how do the institutions ensure that those individuals, those organizations play a critical role in enhancing student employability?
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Smith. I direct that one to Mrs. Stevenson Hamill as well as Dr. Smith. So we can go in the order of Mrs. Hamill.
Okay, I think it came out the importance of partnerships and partnerships with industry, particular sectors, not just for to get a sense of relevance of our offerings, but also to expose our students to real world situations. So I know in the partnership arena here at UTEC, we've also encourage our key sector players to establish like labs here. I am thinking of the Sagicor lab, for example, where students can actually go in and experience real life work situations. And I think expanding in this area will only help the employability prospects of students and graduates.
All right, thank you. So we're hearing about the private sector partnerships. Dr. Smith, what's your take?
All right, so part of the campus strategic plan is industry partnership. So what we have is a number of MOUs, agreements to ensure that we have that level of engagement with students. Now, that I wouldn't necessarily consider that as donors. I would consider that in terms of the stakeholder engagement. So it's really the sector engagements that that we'd have there. Certainly within donors, and when I think Ms. Smith is talking about donors, I think you're actually talking about the financial donors. So we, for example, have at Mona Office of Research and Innovation, where we have a number of engagements through grantsmanship, through research with the various sectors. What we try to do is to see how is it that we can allow for students to well, obviously they participate in it, but have what is known as mirror employment where they actually go and to actually see and study and understand, and that is part of the whole practicum exercise going forward. So that is one of the engagement, certainly at the donorship, the donor level that we certainly do. But I think if I understand your question, more of it is geared towards sector stakeholder engagement, and as I pointed out, we do have a very strong and robust engagement with that. So, for example, of course, the Faculty of Engineering has strong relationship with the Jamaica Institute of Engineers at the varying levels, so as to ensure the engagement.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. I see a hand from Mrs. Seymour Hall.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
In your presentation, Dr. Smith, you mentioned that about 40% of graduates from your programs move on to, well, a category that you described as other. I'm just wondering if that 40%, if they're mainly pursuing qualifications such as micro-credentials and other short cycle programs, and to what extent has the UE pivoted to ensuring that they're offering more short cycle programs that are in demand in terms of the labor market?
All right, thanks very much. A very interesting and important question. So it's not pivoted, but pivoting, because it has to be a consistent engagement going forward. But yes, you are correct, Ms. Seymour, that the other, and I'm actually trying to bring up the presentation here, and it's not seeing it. I do not know what I've done. Here we are. Right. For that section there. Coming up there, hold on there. Let me just get the exact figure here. Right. So what you're seeing is that for the other qualification, you have a 40%, and that's a significant jump. And that has to do with short courses. If you were to remember my earlier response to a question, I can't remember the question, but I made mention of the micro-credential. Well, you have the credential and the non-credential courses, and that is now coming to the fore. And interestingly and importantly as well, what you're finding is that many students, and this is where now we need to do some very rigorous surveys and research. You find that many students are finding a number of the courses too long. And we have to now be innovative in how we can really consolidate some of these programs. So when we measure our retention rate and our graduation rate, some faculties is 3-year program, some faculties 4-year program, but some faculties 5-year programs, right? And having in a system for 5 years, laboring away, and other universities, global, are doing it in a shorter period. So we now need to think within our Jamaican landscape, how is it that we can definitely reduce on the duration. But to get back to your point that the question that you have asked, that other qualification really highlights the short courses, credential and non-credential courses for upskilling to better enable them to carry out their job functions.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Smith. And I can attest to the UA's programs because I too am a student of the postgrad certificate programs. I've done supervisory management and so on.
Wonderful.
I'm familiar.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with the work of the UA, and I know the J-TEC also has similar initiatives as well. So for sure, there are some things in place to ensure that we get the micro-credentialing aspect out, as well as short courses and other upskilling and reskilling processes, right? So thank you so much again. And Mrs. Seymour Hall, I hope he responded to your question well. Still taking a few more questions before we wrap up this session, but it has been a great discussion so far. And I believe that we are well on the way to really analyzing how we can create that ideal graduate turned employer for the world of work, best practices and strategies, among other things, just to ensure that the workforce is, well, the students are ready to enable and equip the workforce in a positive way. So, Mrs. Seymour Hall, I see your hand again. You may go ahead.
I'm just thinking about the fact that for many of these areas that were shared, persons may not know about it. We may try to educate them, but there's a lot of work that has to be done. To what extent have our institutions been ensuring that students coming in, they're not just aware of the business courses and the health courses, but they know about all of the new areas that are now in demand? To what extent are we revising our marketing strategy to attract persons to new programs? And are they taking it up? Is that something that we're tracking or looking at tracking?
Thank you so much, Mrs. Seymour Hall. I do have a personal response to that, but I'll allow Mrs. Stevenson Hamill to respond first, and then we go to Dr. Smith as it relates to that. So how are we promoting and ensuring that students are aware of what's in store for them beyond the general or regular curriculum?
I think in this particular area, more needs to be done. We are actually moving towards that. I know we have our key officers going out there into the schools, engaging with students prior to them coming into the institution and assisting in really providing information, growth areas, career opportunities that could be pursued. I must admit that more could be done, and we intend to do more in this particular area because it's absolutely essential that they're made aware of where the opportunities are and not just be restricted to the traditional areas that they might, have been even being pushed into from family members. They need to be aware of the growth sectors and the opportunities therein.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Stevenson Hamill. Let's go to Dr. Smith, your response.
Thanks very much. Okay, so what you need to establish is a virtuous cycle. And where the virtual cycle really starts is actually the scanning of the various sectors. You'll recall I made mention about the whole matter of program reviews and sector engagement. And it's through sector engagement that you understand where are the potential growth area in the subsectors within an overall sector, right? And once you have that, then what you will do is usually you develop new programs or you adjust programs as you see fit. And once that is done, so each year you have modification to programs, you have introduction to new programs, you have perhaps an abandonment of a particular program or merge into another program, etc. Once you have that information, and as what Mrs. Hamill had just pointed out, is how is it now that you can actually do the engagement with students, and that is where the market is now, is to really get into the schools. So we have a very engaged program now where the team, each faculty along with the marketing team actually go to the school and actually carry out that engagement. Now, on this call, colleagues, one thing you need to recognize is that we as institutions need to recognize that you have many overseas institutions coming here. and doing a very good job at getting the brightest. We need to ensure that we have and maintain the brightness here. So we need to ensure that one is to understand what is happening in the various sectors and subsectors. We need to now refresh and design programs so as to ensure that we can package, right? So as to ensure that we can retain. Then we now need to go and to do the recruitment and to recruit the brightest.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. That sounds like a charge for excellence there. We need to do more to recruit and retain the brightest of the brightest. And that too will touch on the migration initiative, because if persons feel like they are valued locally, then they wouldn't necessarily have the need to seek employment or opportunities elsewhere, or they can go and get those opportunities and come back and give back to Jamaica. Dr. Smith, you had something else to add?
No.
Oh, it's good. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. All right. So again, we've touched on so much, and a part of it as well. Oh, I wanted to add just a personal take too, where I can say that the work, I've seen the work from both institutions and other institutions as well, where they've used the social media, which is really the key platform for information now, to really promote and get into the spaces where young people are. And I can say that the work is doing well there, and there's more to be done, but I see the progress and the initiative. But at the end of the day too, the students, I believe, do have some level of responsibility, or they need to also have the desire to want to excel and want to improve. So the institutions can promote as best as possible, but uptake is also dependent on the student and the individual and their idea of what is a career advancement and growth and development for themselves. So that's just a personal take there. So just to add to the overall discussion. So I have one more question, and this is directed to everyone on the panel. But what advice would you give to someone in this audience? Because I noticed there are a few students here. Welcome. But what advice would you give to someone in the audience who feels unprepared or unsure about their graduation path post-graduation? So I will start with Mrs. Stevenson Hamill. So any advice at all that you'd give to someone in the audience who feels unprepared or unsure about their career path post-graduation?
Thank you for that. I would say don't despair. Yes, have hope. The key thing is to get information. Get information of what the opportunities are, and really with guidance from a mentor or someone, that's trustworthy. You could go and have, counseling sessions and be directed in a path that will ultimately work for you and lead to success.
Thank you so much. Before we move to Dr. Smith, Mrs. Stevenson Hamill, can you share at least, 2 of the resource locations on campus that students can go to get information and support?
Well, or in our student services department, there are several areas. There's a counseling unit. And also in faculties, we have advisors who are assigned to particular students to provide guidance, not just for academics, but also other needs that might come up. So those are critical areas that they could access.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you for being a part of our discussion this morning. Your insight was truly invaluable, and continue to do the great work in your respective role at J-TEC. All right. So we go to Dr. Smith next. Same question for you. What advice would you give to someone in the audience who feels unprepared or unsure about their career path post-graduation? And then if you could share at least 2 resources that persons can go to get assistance.
I would be very disappointed if at the graduation that the level of unsurety, where you should be going, because as I pointed out in my presentation, it's not only the academic element, but you have the student and service development department, and you have the placement and career services. So that answers the latter part of your question. That is there, and is to fully utilize it. And some of the things that you get out of it is career counseling and advising, workshops and seminars, regularly scheduled workshop and seminar on various career-related topics. are discussed there. It also provides job placement services, internship, and Shadow Me program, which I spoke about earlier. It's a career resource center, access to a wide range of career resources, including online research, industry publications, right? So even information that we provide out there and other information, starting Ministry of Labor, etc. We have information here that they can pull on to find out exactly what are the growing trends and how it is that they can do their engagement. There's another one, international mentorship, and that is fast developing. And you have within that student exchange program, professional headshot, complementary professional headshot session to help students and alumni to create a polished and professional image, right? And closet, career closet, access the career closet, which provides professional attire and interviews, and that is even part of the mentorship program. And one thing that we have, certainly been seeking to do is to get industry leaders to participate in the mentorship program, to not only just to mentor them in terms of their career path, but certainly the post-graduation engagement.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Smith, for sharing. And again, thank you for being a part of our discussion this morning. The really good insights on behalf of the UA and just the work that the institution is doing to develop its students and create that ideal university graduate. So thank you so much and continue to keep up the great work in your area. All right, we now take the response from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. I'll go to Mrs. Mackenzie Mayer and or Mr. Shane Palmer. And just to repeat, the question is, what advice would you give to someone in the audience who feels unprepared or unsure about their career path post-graduation?
All right, Brittany, thanks for that. As Denise had touched on it, where she said that you have to be informed. So one of the things that would minimize that sort of trepidation or fear is to be informed about what the labor market is seeking from the graduates. So you have to be informed about the type of skills, the occupation, the industries, and so forth that are in demand. See, it's very important for graduates to keep abreast of the changes that are taking place in the labor market. Use your social media pages and wisely. So don't just go on there to browse and so forth, but to use them to gain information and knowledge as to what is happening in the labor market. Also, very important, I mentioned about your social media pages. Employers, I'm employing graduates to be mindful of the things that you post on your social media pages. Employers have been searching on job seekers pages to get a better idea of the type of person that you are. So it's very, very important to be careful of the things that you post, because these things can work against you in the labor market. So it's all about how you market yourself within the labor market. Mention was made that of the labor market information system that we have at the Ministry of Labor. On the website, you will have a number of labor market information available in terms of the research studies that we do, such as the National Labor Market Study. We have that study that coming up next year to field. So that will bring new level of information about what is happening in the labor market. It's a very comprehensive study, all-island study that will be looking at what is happening in the labor market. So that is to come next year. And again, we have the labor market trends report. We just recently concluded the worker shortage study. So all these studies are available, and the wealth of information is available on the website for persons to get themselves in the know. Additionally, we have the Electronic Labor Exchange Department that forms part of the LMIS. So they deal with the placement aspect, as Mrs. Mackenzie Mayer had mentioned. Now, the ELE department, they conduct what is known as employability skills sessions. So graduates are persons who don't really know, are very nervous, or don't really know how to conduct themselves in interview. They can participate in these sessions that the ELE conducts, so that it helps you to be more employment ready graduates. So as I said before, it's not just about having the qualifications and the paper, but how is it that you present yourself? And through the ELE, you're able to better know how to present yourself within the labor market. So those are some of the things that I would like to end by saying. Also, one more thing. Also, how you answer your phone. So you send out a resume, and you'll see a private number calling your phone. This is something that employers are complaining about. Graduates are answering the phone, yo, or who this? Immediately, yeah, these things are happening a lot. Or you get the silent thing where you see a private number calling you. You answer the phone, but you're saying nothing, waiting on the person to say something. These things annoy HR managers and employers. So I'm imploring graduates not to do that. If you send out your resume, expect a call from every and any number, whether private or unknown number or whatever. So please, present yourself in a way that enhances your ability to get a job.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Palmer. I love the passion that you spoke with when you touched on these points. So telling persons to be informed, so do your own research. As I mentioned earlier, the institutions can promote so much, but if you are not actively seeking the information, then oftentimes it may not even pop up, especially on social media. We have this thing called the algorithm. Dependent on what you search for, then that is really what will present itself to you. So use your platform for good. You also mentioned to ensure that you are mindful of what you post, because there is a thing called digital footprint. Whatever you post online, it never really goes away, even if you delete it. Make use of the Ministry of Labor and the Social Security platform. So there's the LMIS platform. There are several job fairs, and then the Electronic Labor Exchange Department, which conducts these employability skills sessions. So yes, persons, there are opportunities here for you to upskill, to reskill, and to learn how to be the best version of yourself, equipped and ready for the world of work. So thank you so much, Mr. Palmer and Mrs. Simone Mackenzie Mayer from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security for your insights and for your advice. So at this time, I'm going to ask my team to repost the poll. Persons, please, we really need your feedback just to ensure that we know that this initiative has satisfied our objectives and met our KPIs, but also that you are satisfied with the information presented. So if you've already responded as well, we ask that you resubmit a response. There was a small error on the initial response. So we ask again that you resubmit some responses to the poll that is now being shared on screen. So my team, you can go ahead and present that. But again, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Brittany Clark. I was your moderator for this session. And again, it's J-TEC week, so please stay tuned and look out for all the activities that we have planned for you. So navigating graduate employability, best practices and strategies is what was discussed today. And our presenters would have touched on various initiatives, various things covered by their respective institutions and organizations. But some of the key things that came out again is to be informed, be aware of the trends in the new workspace or the future of work. Things are trending more towards tech and IT-related initiatives. So look at things that involve AI. If you're sticking to traditional roles, look at how you can stand out and be competitive in these environments, because at the end of the day, many persons are going to be graduating in your respective field with your respective degree, but how are you going to differentiate and distinguish yourself to be the best candidate for those roles? Also look at where there are gaps in the world of work as well. There are several vacancies in many areas, so don't be afraid to tap into those areas and see where you can position yourself to be successful. And at the end of the day, again, remember that you also have to work on yourself as the candidate or as the ideal graduate. So work on those soft skills, participate in the employability skills sessions by by the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. And of course, remember that there's work to be done on both sides. So while the institution has a responsibility to support you by setting the way for these initiatives, it's also important to know that you have work to do as the individual to ensure that you too are the ideal candidate. All right, so thank you all so much for your responses. I see the poll is now completed. My J-TEC team, you can let me know if you are satisfied with the results. And again, I want to thank everyone for spending the morning with us to discuss today's topic. And again, look out for more activities from J-TEC Week. We have the J-TEC Week Forum coming up. And all right, so the poll is back up again, asking everyone just before you leave to complete the poll so that we can have your feedback. It's 2 short questions. The first one, on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied are you with the information provided in the webinar? And 2, if you want, this one is optional, you can provide comments based on your response to question 1. But we definitely need your response to the first question on a scale of 1 to 10. How satisfied are you with the information provided in this webinar? All right, so we'll give persons another minute to complete that. But again, thank you. And thanks to the J-TEC team as well for giving me the opportunity to moderate for today. I had a lot of fun and I learned a lot from our speakers who joined us. All right, so I see the responses coming in. Excellent. And I see Erica Campbell asked if a copy of this recording will be shared. Can Ms. Smith or Mrs. Blackwood respond to that for me, just to confirm whether or not a copy of this recording would be shared for the webinar?
Thank you, Ms. Brittany Clark. Yes, a copy of the recording. It's on YouTube or J-TEC TV YouTube channel, so the recording can be found there.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
All right, so I see the responses coming in. And again, this is my final thank you to everyone. We really appreciate your support for today's event, and we look forward to your support for the remainder of J-TEC Week. So this was our research forum. Feel free to drop some emojis as you leave, just to show how excited you were to be a part of today's initiative. But again, thank you all so much for joining. And again, thanks for the opportunity to host today's session.
Recording stopped.